Alex Logan stood by the viewing port of the small diplomatic vessel, watching as the planet Valoria came into view. It shimmered beneath the twin suns, its surface covered in oceans and vast rivers that glistened like diamonds in the light. He'd seen countless worlds in his years as an emissary for the Union of Planets, but Valoria was something different. The isolationist Valorians were mysterious, rumored to possess a deep connection to their planet's water in ways no other species did. This mission was Alex's chance to establish relations where many others had failed. As the ship descended into the atmosphere, the beauty of Valoria became even more apparent. Towering waterfalls cascaded down mountain cliffs, feeding into crystalline lakes that stretched for miles. The air, rich with moisture, felt almost alive. Once landed, Alex was greeted by a group of tall, slender Valorians, their skin a soft blue, their eyes shimmering like liquid silver. One among them stepped forward, a woman with an air of quiet authority. "Welcome, Emissary Logan," she said, her voice smooth and melodic. "I am Naya, assigned to be your guide and caretaker during your stay." Alex nodded politely, noting the fluidity of her movements. "Thank you, Nia. I look forward to learning more about your people." Nia inclined her head, and there was something in her gaze that hinted at layers of understanding beyond her words. "The Council will meet with you in 3 days. Until then, I will ensure your comfort." She led Alex through lush forests where trees dripped with dew and streams crisscrossed the landscape. They arrived at a villa perched on the edge of a serene lake, its structure made of glistening stone that seemed to glow under the fading light. "This is your home for now," Nia said, stepping aside to let him enter. "If you need anything, I'm always nearby." The villa was elegant yet simple, its windows offering panoramic views of the lake and mountains beyond. The sound of water lapping against the shore was soothing, almost hypnotic. As Alex settled in, he couldn't shake the feeling that Valoria was more than just a planet. It felt alive, as if the water carried the pulse of the world itself. It was late in the evening when Alex heard the soft knock at his door. The villa had been quiet, the only sounds the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the occasional whisper of wind through the trees. He had been reviewing his notes for the upcoming meeting with the Valorian Council when the unexpected interruption came. "Come in," Alex called, setting his tablet aside. The door slid open, and Nia stepped inside. Alex blinked in surprise. She was soaked from head to toe, her silver hair plastered against her face, her blue skin shimmering with moisture. Her long flowing dress clung to her body, the fabric drenched and dripping onto the floor. "Nia, what happened?" Alex stood, concern flickering across his face. "Are you all right?" Nia's silver eyes met his, and for the first time, Alex saw something in her expression he hadn't noticed before: vulnerability. She hesitated for a moment, her usual calm demeanor replaced with uncertainty. "I need your help," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex frowned, stepping closer. "Help? Of course. What do you need?" Nia took a breath, her hands trembling slightly as water dripped from her fingers. "I need you to wash me." The request caught Alex off guard. He stared at her, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Wash you?" Nia nodded, her gaze steady, though her posture remained tense. "It is a Valorian custom, a ritual that must be completed. I serve you now, and this act, it is necessary for the bond between us." Alex felt a surge of confusion. He had been briefed on Valorian culture before his arrival, but nothing like this had been mentioned. A washing ritual? A bond? He wasn't sure what to make of it. "Nia, I don't understand," Alex said carefully. "This isn't something I've heard of before. Are you sure it's necessary?" Nia lowered her gaze, her voice softening. "It is not just a tradition, emissary. It is an essential part of our connection to you. Without it, the bond remains incomplete." There was a quiet desperation in her tone that made Alex hesitate. He didn't fully understand the implications of what she was asking, but he could see that this meant something deeply important to her. Valorians were known for their secretive customs, and he didn't want to offend her or her people by refusing. "All right," Alex said slowly. "If this is something that's important to you, then I'll do it." Nia's eyes flickered with relief, and she gestured for him to follow. She led him through the villa to a room he hadn't yet explored. As the door slid open, Alex found himself standing in what appeared to be a ceremonial chamber. The walls were made of a smooth, glowing stone that seemed to pulse with a soft light, casting an ethereal glow throughout the space. In the center of the room was a pool of water, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the light from the walls. The air was thick with humidity, and the faint scent of rain lingered in the air. "This is the heart of Valoria," Naya said quietly, stepping toward the pool. "It is where the water speaks to us, where our bonds are formed." She stepped into the pool, her feet sinking into the warm water. Her movements were graceful, but there was a tension in her body that Alex couldn't ignore. She turned to face him, her silver eyes soft and expectant. "Please," she said, her voice barely audible. "Wash me." Alex hesitated for only a moment before kneeling at the edge of the pool. He dipped his hands into the water, feeling its warmth spread through his fingers. As he lifted the water and began to wash Nia's arms, a strange sensation washed over him, something almost electric. The water wasn't just water. It pulsed with life, with energy, as if it were connected to something far greater. Nia closed her eyes as he continued, her expression softening as he moved the water over her shoulders and down her back. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier, charged with an intensity Alex hadn't expected. The act felt intimate, not in a physical sense, but in a way that transcended the ordinary. It was as if the water itself was bonding them together, linking their fates in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. When the ritual was complete, Nia opened her eyes, and for a moment they held his gaze. There was a softness there, a gratitude that went beyond words. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with quiet emotion. "The bond is complete." Alex stood, his heart still racing from the intensity of the moment. "What does this bond mean?" Nia stepped out of the pool, and the water that had clung to her moments before slid away, leaving her completely dry. It was as if the water obeyed her will, moving in ways that defied explanation. "The bond means that you are no longer just a visitor," Nia said, her voice steady. "You are part of Valoria now, part of the water that sustains us." Alex stared at her, trying to process the gravity of what she was saying. He had come here as an emissary, expecting to negotiate diplomatic agreements and establish peaceful relations. But this was something far more profound. The bond between them felt tangible, like an invisible thread that tied him to Nia and to Valoria itself. "I don't fully understand," Alex admitted, his voice low, "but I trust you." Nia smiled, a rare, genuine smile that lit up her features. "In time, you will understand. The bond is only the beginning." As she turned to leave, Alex stood alone in the glowing chamber, the water still rippling gently in the pool behind him. The bond was only the beginning. What that meant, and where it would lead, remained a mystery. But one thing was clear. His time on Valoria had just become far more complicated than he had ever anticipated. In the days that followed the ritual, Alex found it impossible to shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed. Valoria no longer felt like just a foreign planet. It felt alive in ways he hadn't fully comprehended before. The sound of the water, whether the gentle ripple of the lake by his villa or the distant roar of waterfalls in the mountains, seemed to pulse through him, like a heartbeat in the background of his consciousness. And Nia, she too was different. Her demeanor remained calm and composed, but there was an unspoken connection between them now, something that transcended words. The bond she had spoken of was more than just a ceremonial gesture. Alex could feel it, like a current flowing beneath the surface of everything they did. Whenever she entered the room, it was as though a tether between them tightened, pulling him into her orbit. One morning, as the twin suns rose over the horizon, Alex sat by the veranda, watching the mist rise from the lake. Nia approached quietly, her movement so graceful that he didn't notice her until she was standing beside him. "Valoria is beautiful in the morning," Alex said, trying to ease the tension that had been building since the ritual. Nia nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the light of the suns. "It is. The water is most alive during the dawn. It is when we feel its energy the strongest." Alex turned to face her, sensing that there was more to this than a simple conversation. Nia, ever since the ritual, I felt different. It's like I can sense the water, like it's alive, like I'm connected to it somehow. Is this what you meant by the bond? Nia looked down at the shimmering water of the lake before meeting his gaze again. Yes, the bond between us is not just symbolic. The water of Valoria carries the life force of our people, and through the ritual, you have become a part of that flow. She paused, her expression softening. We Valorians are bound to the water in ways that outsiders cannot easily understand. It sustains us, connects us, and gives us life. Without it, we would perish. And now, through the bond, you share in that connection. Alex felt a weight settle on his chest, a mixture of awe and uncertainty. But what does that mean for me? Am I bound to Valoria now? Nia nodded slowly. Yes, in a way you are. The bond is not something that can be undone. It ties you to the planet, to its water, and to me. Her words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Alex had come to Valoria as a diplomat, expecting to engage in negotiations, not to form an intimate connection with the planet itself. And yet, he couldn't deny that the bond felt real. He could sense it, feel it, in the way the water called to him, in the way Nia's presence seemed to resonate with him on a level he couldn't explain. There's something else, isn't there? Alex asked, his voice low. Something you're not telling me. Nia hesitated, her gaze flickering with something like guilt. There is, the bond between us. It was not just for tradition. It was necessary for our survival. Alex frowned, leaning forward. What do you mean? Nia took a deep breath, the tension in her posture growing. The water of Valoria is drying up, slowly but surely. Our people are dying because we cannot sustain ourselves without it. The Council did not tell you this because they feared it would scare you away. But the bond we share, it strengthens the flow of water. It allows us to tap into the planet's remaining reserves. Alex stared at her, stunned. So you're saying the ritual wasn't just about forming a bond with me, it was about saving your people? Nia nodded, her expression pained. Yes, without the bond, Valoria's water will continue to diminish and we will perish. The bond allows us to access the deeper wells of the planet's energy, but it requires someone from the outside, someone not of Valorian blood, to strengthen that connection. Alex stood, the weight of her words crashing down on him. He had thought he was here as an emissary, but now it seemed he was something more, a lifeline, a key to Valoria's survival. And the realization hit him like a wave. He couldn't just walk away from this. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Alex asked, his voice strained. Nia's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her normally composed demeanor slipping. Because I didn't want to force this upon you. I wanted you to understand the bond for what it is, a connection, not a burden. But now you must know the truth. Valoria cannot survive without you. The gravity of the situation settled over Alex like a heavy fog. He had never imagined that his mission would come to this, a choice between abandoning Valoria to its fate or committing himself to a planet that needed him more than he could have ever anticipated. I don't know what to say, Alex whispered, his mind spinning with the implications. You don't have to decide now, Nia said softly, but the Council will ask you soon. They will ask you to stay, to help us, and I will ask the same. Alex looked at her, and in that moment, he saw not just a servant, but a person who had risked everything to save her people. A person who had placed her trust in him, not just because she had to, but because she believed in the bond they shared. I need time to think, Alex said, his voice barely audible. Nia nodded, her gaze full of understanding. Take all the time you need. I will be here, waiting. As Nia walked away, leaving him alone by the edge of the lake, Alex felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The bond between him and Nia was real, but it came with a price, and now he had to decide whether he was willing to pay it. 3 days after the ritual, Alex found himself standing before the Valorian Council. The grand hall where they met was situated on the edge of a massive waterfall, with the sound of rushing water filling the air. The walls of the chamber glowed with a soft blue light, and the floor was a polished stone that reflected the light from the water outside. It was a breathtaking scene, but Alex could feel the tension simmering beneath the beauty. The council members, tall and slender like all Valorians, sat in a semicircle, their silver eyes reflecting the light of the chamber. They wore long, flowing robes of shimmering fabric, and their expressions were unreadable. At the center of the group sat Elder Kylan, the head of the council, his gaze fixed on Alex with an intensity that made him feel exposed. Nia stood beside him, her posture calm and composed, though Alex could sense the quiet anxiety radiating from her. This was the moment she had warned him about, the moment when he would have to face the full truth of his situation on Valoria. "Emissary Logan," Elder Kylan began, his voice deep and steady, "we are grateful for your presence here. Your arrival marks a pivotal moment in the history of our people." Alex inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Elder. I've been honored to learn about Valoria and its people during my time here." Kylan nodded, his silver eyes narrowing slightly. "There is much you still do not know, Emissary. Valoria is facing a crisis, one that we can no longer keep hidden." The Elder's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Alex shifted uncomfortably, already knowing where this conversation was headed. He had come to Valoria with diplomatic intentions, but now it was clear that something far more personal was at stake. "As you may have already realized," Kylan continued, "our connection to the water is essential to our survival. For generations, the water has sustained us, providing not only physical nourishment, but spiritual strength. However, in recent years, the water has begun to diminish." Alex glanced at Nia, her earlier confession echoing in his mind. The water was dying, and with it, Valoria. "What is causing the water to disappear?" Alex asked, his voice low. Kylan's expression darkened. "We do not know for certain. Some believe it is a natural cycle of the planet, while others believe it is the result of our over-reliance on the water's power. Regardless of the cause, the result is the same. Our people are weakening, and without a solution, we will not survive." The weight of the Elder's words settled over Alex like a storm cloud. Valoria was dying, and now he understood the true purpose of his visit. This wasn't just about diplomacy. It was about survival. "You are the first outsider to form a bond with one of our own," Kylan said, his gaze flickering briefly to Nia. "Through the ritual, you have become part of our world, part of the flow of water that sustains us. This bond has strengthened our connection to the planet's remaining water reserves, but it is not enough." Alex's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Kylan leaned forward slightly, his voice grave. "We need you to stay, Emissary. Your bond with Nia has shown us that outsiders, those who do not share our blood, can strengthen our connection to the water. If you remain here, your presence will help us access the deeper reserves of the planet's energy. Without you, the bond will break, and Valoria will continue to wither." The silence that followed was deafening. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as the full weight of the situation bore down on him. He had come to Valoria expecting to engage in diplomatic discussions, but now he was being asked to save an entire planet, at the cost of his own life as he knew it. "I don't understand," Alex said slowly. "If I stay, what happens to me? Am I trapped here forever?" Kylan's gaze softened slightly, as if he could sense the turmoil in Alex's mind. "You would not be trapped, Emissary. But the bond you share with Nia is not something that can be easily undone. If you choose to stay, you will become part of Valoria. Your life will be tied to the water, just as ours is. Leaving would be difficult." Alex turned to Nia, searching her eyes for answers. She looked back at him, her expression filled with quiet sorrow. "You don't have to decide now," she whispered, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "But if you leave, Valoria may not survive." The room seemed to close in around him. The decision before him was monumental: stay and help save Valoria, or leave and risk the extinction of an entire species. He hadn't asked for this responsibility, but now it was his to bear. "You were never meant to know this," Kylan said gently. "But fate has brought you here for a reason. We do not believe it was by chance." Fate. The word felt heavy in Alex's chest. He had always believed in the power of choice, in the ability to shape his own destiny. But now, standing before the Valorian Council, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled by forces far beyond his control. "What will happen to me if I stay?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kailan's expression softened even further. "You will become one of us, in time. Your bond with Nia will grow stronger, and through that bond, you will be able to harness the power of the water. You will be tied to Valoria, but you will also become part of its life force. It is a great responsibility, but also a great honor." Alex's mind raced, the enormity of the situation overwhelming him. He had never imagined that his mission would lead to such a choice. But now, standing before the council, he realized that his decision could determine the fate of an entire planet. "I need time to think," Alex said, his voice tight with emotion. Kailan nodded, his gaze filled with understanding. "Take all the time you need, emissary. But know this, Valoria's time is running out. We cannot survive without your help." As the council dismissed him, Alex walked out of the grand hall, his mind spinning with the weight of his decision. Nia followed him, her presence a quiet comfort beside him. The bond between them was real, and now he understood the full implications of what it meant. He was no longer just an emissary. He was part of Valoria, part of its lifeblood. And now, he had to decide whether he was willing to accept that responsibility or walk away from it forever. The sky above Valoria darkened as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the landscape. Alex stood at the edge of the lake near his villa, watching the water ripple gently against the shore. The air was heavy with moisture, thick with the scent of the planet's life force. Every drop of water, every whisper of wind, seemed to carry the weight of the decision he had to make. Nia stood beside him, her presence quiet but steady. She hadn't pressed him for an answer, but Alex could feel the unspoken tension between them. The bond they shared had deepened since the ritual, and now every moment felt like a thread pulling him closer to her, and to Valoria. "You don't have to do this," Nia said softly, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, but there was a tremor beneath her words. "I know the council has asked much of you, but this is your choice. I would never want to trap you here." Alex turned to look at her, seeing the sorrow in her silver eyes. She was trying to give him a way out, but he knew what staying meant to her, and to her people. "You said Valoria can't survive without me," Alex replied, his voice quiet but firm. "If I leave, your world dies. How can I walk away from that?" Nia's gaze dropped to the ground, and for a moment the only sound was the soft lapping of the water against the shore. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. "I've grown to care for you, Alex, more than I should. This bond between us, it's not just about Valoria anymore." Her confession hit him like a wave, and for a moment, Alex was speechless. He had felt it too. The connection between them had grown stronger with each passing day. But hearing her admit it made it all the more real. He wasn't just deciding the fate of a planet. He was deciding the fate of their relationship. "I care for you too, Nia," Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. "But this is more than just us. If I stay, I'm giving up my life on Earth. I'm giving up everything I've ever known. And if I leave, if you leave, I'll lose you," Nia finished, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. The gravity of the moment weighed heavily on them both. Alex had always believed in his ability to control his own destiny, but now he felt the pull of something far greater than himself. The bond he shared with Nia was real, but it was also tied to the survival of an entire species. "Tell me the truth," Alex said, his voice steady. "What happens to me if I stay? What will I become?" Nia hesitated, her gaze flickering with uncertainty. "You will remain yourself, but over time the bond will deepen. You will become more connected to Valoria, to its water, and to its people. You will live a life tied to this world, bound by its rhythms. You won't be trapped, but you won't be the same." Alex stared at the water, watching the light from the distant moons dance on its surface. The idea of staying here, of becoming one with Valoria, was both terrifying and exhilarating. He had always sought out new experiences, new challenges, but this was something else entirely. Nia took a step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to make the sacrifice, Alex. If you leave, the bond will break, and I will understand. I won't hold it against you. Her words were filled with pain, and Alex could see how much it cost her to say them. She was giving him a way out, but deep down, he knew that leaving wasn't an option. Not for him, and not for her. I can't leave you, Nia, Alex said, his voice trembling with emotion. I won't leave you. The relief that washed over Nia's face was palpable, but there was also a sadness there, a recognition of the price they were both about to pay. She reached out, taking his hand in hers, and together they stood at the edge of the lake, their bond now stronger than ever. The final ceremony, Nia said quietly. It will solidify the bond completely. You will become one with Valoria, part of its life force. It's a transformation. Alex nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He had made his decision, but the reality of it still felt overwhelming. What do I need to do? Nia led him to the center of the lake, where the water was calm and still. The stars above them reflected on the surface, creating the illusion that they were walking on a sea of light. In the distance, the waterfall roared, its sound a constant reminder of the planet's vitality. This is where it happens, Nia said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. The water will accept you, just as it has accepted me. You will feel the bond grow, and in that moment, you will become part of Valoria. Alex took a deep breath, his heart racing. He stepped into the water, feeling its warmth spread through him, enveloping him in a comforting embrace. Nia followed, her presence a steadying force beside him. As they stood together in the center of the lake, Nia began to speak in a language Alex didn't understand, her words flowing like the water around them. The air grew thick with energy, and Alex felt a strange sensation, like the water itself was alive, pulsing with life. The bond between them intensified, and Alex felt a surge of warmth spread through his body. His senses heightened, and for the first time, he could feel the planet's heartbeat, the pulse of life that flowed through its rivers, its lakes, its oceans. It was as though he had become part of the planet, part of its soul. And then, with a final breath, the transformation was complete. The water surged around them, glowing with an ethereal light, and Alex felt the bond solidify. He was no longer just an outsider. He was part of Valoria now, bound to its life force, its water, and to Nia. As the light faded and the water calmed, Nia stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. It is done, she whispered. Alex reached out, pulling her into his arms, their connection stronger than ever. He had made the sacrifice, given up his life on Earth, but in return, he had gained something far more profound, a bond that transcended worlds, a love that would last for eternity. Months had passed since the final ceremony, and Valoria had begun to heal. The rivers flowed with new life, the lakes shimmered with vitality, and the people thrived once more. The bond between Alex and Nia had saved the planet, and together, they had become guardians of its future. As Alex stood at the edge of the lake, watching the sunset over the water, he felt at peace. He was no longer just a diplomat, no longer just a visitor to this world. He was part of Valoria now, its protector, its lifeblood, and with Nia by his side, he knew that he had made the right choice. The water called to him, its gentle whisper a reminder of the bond that had brought him here. He had sacrificed one life, but in doing so, he had gained another, one filled with purpose, love, and an unbreakable connection to a world that had needed him more than he could have ever imagined. Captain Derek Williams leaned back in his chair on the bridge of the starship Voyager, gazing out at the stars streaking past as they traveled at warp speed. The mission had been routine so far, mapping uncharted sectors of the galaxy, cataloging new celestial phenomena, and occasionally encountering alien life forms. It was all in a day's work for the seasoned crew of the Voyager. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal," Lieutenant Maria Chen reported, her eyes scanning the readouts on her console. "It's coming from a planet in an uncharted system." Derek leaned forward.